All right, people, good evening. We are coming to you a little bit later than usual because, like I said, I wanted to try to post a training camp recap video the day of the actual training camp session. We'll see how this works. We'll see how it goes. We'll try it for a few days. If it doesn't seem like anything's really changed, or if the videos are getting less views somehow, then we can go back to the way we were doing it before, with it being the morning after. But we're going to try it like this for a little bit. I know this is a little bit late for an upload about something like football, but I do get a lot of people telling me they like to watch me in the evening too, so may not make too big of a difference. But today was day 3 of Seahawks training camp. Again, we got a pretty good set of information and updates from the various beat reporters. I'm going to go ahead and go through it in this video. Please click the thumbs up on this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to support the channel. So, quite a few things to go through here. We're just going to go ahead and start and kind of go in a little bit of a, not necessarily random order, but just some noteworthy things from today. First, injury stuff. Or, in this case, it's not really an injury, but we do have an absence here. Shaq Griffin had a personal matter today, and he was excused. He was not there. He is expected back soon, so shouldn't be really too much of anything going on there. I don't know if this is necessarily helping his ability to make this team, because that is not a guarantee, but I doubt this makes too big of a difference on anything. And we also got this from McDonald on Jonathan Hankins. No timetable yet on his return. I wouldn't worry about this. He's not a player we're going to lean on too heavily anyway. So I'm not really looking at this and thinking to myself, we need to do something about nose tackle any more than we already may have needed to. So nothing to really trip on here, but we don't yet know what's going on with Hankins. I would guess it's precautionary because he's so old, but the fact that he is so old and has so many miles on him might be indicative of the fact that we can't count on him to get healthy all that soon. Okay, moving on from the injury or player absence stuff. It was a pretty intense day of practice, according to most people. Intense in all the best ways. There was some stuff going on between, I think it was Derick Hall and Gray Zabel, where Gray Zabel had his welcome to the NFL moment, where he just kind of got pancaked. And there was a lot of physicality. There was a lot of chatter, particularly from the defense, because the defense continues to look a little better than the offense. It's the kind of stuff you would expect and the kind of stuff that generally I think you welcome. All right. Let's start with the offensive line here because, let me pause that real quick. Don't need to get in trouble. The offensive line, this Dugar talks about this a little bit here. You have Charles Cross, Gray Zabel, Olu Oluwatimi, Christian Haynes, and Abe Lucas as your starters. But that's expected. That's kind of the default starting 5 for the moment, I think. Later in the drill, Haynes and Olu swapped spots. So that is very interesting for 2 different reasons. One, Haynes continues to get work at center, which is something that I really like. But does this also mean that Oluwatimi is getting work at left guard? He's never played anything other than center, other than maybe 1 or 2 snaps in college. To my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, it's not something that's ever really been considered to be a part of his skill set. It's not something that was ever really considered to be something that he would bring to the table. There wasn't really a flexibility thing with him. It was just he's a center, pure center. It is kind of interesting, though, if they're letting him get some reps at left guard. Now, it's day 3 of training camp. There's no guarantee that this means anything when the season starts. I do, however, think that it's very notable and very interesting that we're doing stuff like this. Maybe we're just trying to find those little edges on the depth chart so we don't have to carry as many players. Maybe we're experimenting, or maybe we see something with him that we really like. I don't know. But that definitely caught my attention both ways. And McDonald actually talked about Christian Haynes maybe starting at center. McDonald said that he is in the mix. He's also in the mix to start at right guard. He did say, and this is where you got to curb your enthusiasm a little bit, Sundel and Oluwatimi are ahead of Haynes in the center battle, so there's a lot for him to work through if he actually wants to win it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that he's getting a chance, and that's really all you can ask for. If he gets the chance and he can't do it, then, well, what else can you say other than it's probably for the best? In any case, right guard remains the position he's most likely to win at, but I'm going to keep saying it. I like the upside of Christian Haynes at center and Anthony Bradford at right guard. I do. I'm that gets me excited in a way that Oluwatimi at center and Haynes at right guard just doesn't quite manage. But the important point here is that they're being allowed to battle it out, and presumably the best player will win. Whoever does it will have earned it. All right. Some more stuff with the offense here. There was another interception of Sam Darnold on a similar throw to JSN. This one by Julian Love. So 2 safeties have come away with 2 interceptions of Darnold so far. Now, that's not to say that Sam Darnold has had a big problem so far in training camp with interceptions. Those are the only 2 that he has so far, it looks like. I'm not too worried about that. He's going to throw the ball to the other team sometimes. That can't be avoided. And I wouldn't expect a player like a Sam Darnold to turn into some Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson type player with the ability to just completely avoid the interceptions. Even at his best, he's going to throw a few. He's going to give it to the other team a few times, and that's okay. We can mitigate it by keeping his attempts down. We can mitigate it with a good run game, and we can mitigate it with a good defense that can protect him when he does turn it over. But I'm not expecting him to become that completely clean player the way that guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson were in their prime. I guess the interesting note here is that this was another switched coverage from the defense. So this defense is doing a very good job confusing the Seahawks offense so far. We've seen multiple plays now. Apparently this was a very similar play to the interception that DeAnthony Bell had yesterday, where the quarterback throws a kind of a slant route, not a short one, but more of an intermediate one, and the safety just gets underneath it. And this is the power of that Mike McDonald defense, and we saw a little bit of it last year. We need to see more of it this year. And overall, you're going to need them to do it a lot when the actual season starts. And again, I want to stress, overall, the Sam Darnold to JSN connection in camp has looked quite good. There were some notes from multiple people, including Dugar. I think John Boyle sounded off on this as well. Sam and JSN has mostly been in sync so far this camp. Not that that means much when the season starts, but it's the only thing we have to go on right now. So if you're wondering about that connection, because obviously JSN had the breakout year last year with Geno Smith, it looks like we can count on him continuing to have big production with a new quarterback in a new offense. I don't think he'll produce as much, but he'll continue to be productive, and he'll produce enough for us to do what we need to do. One of the guys that got highlighted a good amount today by the beat reporters was Derick Hall. He had a play during the team period where he lifted Josh Jones, and then Josh Jones fell down in the backfield. And it's indicative of his strength as a player. This is something that got called out a couple times now. And it does give you some hope that his run defense is something that can get better. And there's no reason to believe it can't get better even by default because he is so young. But you hear about things like this. You hear about some of the other things that he's doing out there that showcase his strength. And you're like, this could work. Because last year I was a little bit, I don't know. I don't want to say I was down on Derick Hall because he did have a really nice second year. And he showed massive improvement over his rookie year, of course. But there was definitely a part of me that was like, is this just going to be who he is from now on? Is he going to be a purely one-dimensional player? His story isn't written yet. And you hear about things like this. There were a couple other plays in this game as well where he made a flash play where he showed off his strength. And you're like, he can still figure this out. He's still got plenty of time. Jaron Reed, who gave one of the post-practice pressers, talked about it a little bit. It looks better on film. They were chirping on practice. We knew something was going to happen. And this speaks to like how it got a little bit chippy and it got a little physical out there. Dugar talks a little bit about Emin Wari here. Basically, he's playing at the second level, and I think this speaks to our desire to get him close to the line of scrimmage, where we feel like his best strengths as a player are. I think we feel like that if we get him close to the line of scrimmage, he can use his size and his strength and his physicality, and we can reduce some of the things that are problematic with him. Some of the change of direction stuff, some of the stopping and starting stuff, playing in space. We're trying to reduce that for this rookie year and find ways to get him closer to the line, talking about him playing at the second level. And it also allows him to use his versatility as a blitzer, as a man cover guy, as a run defender, particularly as a run defender. Going well. I'm excited for what Emmanwori brings. That's still my favorite player that we got in the draft last year. He is, I think, the best player we got in the draft last year. And I believe that he will prove it sooner rather than later. Jaron Reed also had this to say, and I want to bring up a couple things that Jaron Reed said because he had some fun in his post-practice presser. Similarities between Derick Hall and Demarcus Lawrence. They're crazy as hell. They play one way, and that's balls to the wall. That's all you can ask for. That's the standard we're trying to set with his defense. So the thing that catches your attention here is that Demarcus Lawrence is known. He is ultimately a run defender. That's what makes him special. That's what makes him great. He can get after the quarterback some, but his claim to fame as a player is being elite defending the run. And again, you see something like this and you're like, well, maybe Derick Hall can at least get most of the way there. You've got these comps coming out, and I know players are just going to say stuff, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to bear out. But it does point out that there is a skill set here beyond what we've seen. And if Derick Hall is able to figure it out to this degree, where he's actually like Demarcus Lawrence, then you've really got something for the long term here. One thing from Boyle's article that he put up on Seahawks.com that I didn't see from anybody else, Tyrese Knight looks like he's making strides in year 2. That was the 5th blurb that he did. And in run defense and pass coverage, he looks like he's improved. Now, you would expect any player that played a good amount of football as a rookie to improve in their second year. There is some like sophomore slump stuff that occasionally happens, but it'd be very odd if a player peaked as a rookie. That's not something that's ever really supposed to happen. You as a player are supposed to get better as you enter your mid-20s and even late 20s, and then taper off as you start to get to your really late 20s and early 30s. This shouldn't be particularly surprising, but this is an underrated element of this team for 2025 because there's not a lot of depth at that inside linebacker spot. We need both of our guys to be good and be healthy. And looking good so far. We've got a couple of things going on with some of the depth receivers, and I mean the depth receivers. We had a one-handed catch from Montori Foster Jr., a UDFA from Michigan State, catching it from Sam Darnold. I'm not going to play the clip here, but it's on Greg Bell's X account. We have some room on the practice squad for receivers. I don't know what we're going to do there. I think that you might have a guy like a Broden, who, by the way, also you got this clip here from Nemhauser of Broden running a seam route. But I don't know what we're going to do back there. Is it going to be Steven Sims because of his special teams value? Is it going to be somebody like, could Ricky White end up on the practice squad? I think there's a lot of room back there because we might only carry 5 receivers. We might carry 6, but it's Kubiak's offense. We might carry just 5. And guys like Montori Foster Jr. and Tyrone Broden, I think they've got a chance. And in a lot of previous years for the Seahawks, they wouldn't, because we'd have too many receivers that are good, and they'd just be kind of there playing for some other, trying to play for a roster spot on some other team. We also got some Jaron Reed praise of Byron Murphy II. In my mind, I can see him being Defensive Player of the Year. Proceeded to call Murphy strong as shit 3 times in a row. I don't know if I ever see Byron Murphy ever being that kind of a player, but he can be a very valuable player, and you can see the hype building up around his big improvement as a sophomore. Very excited for that. Very important to this upcoming season that we have this dominant interior rush to make up for the fact that we won't necessarily have the greatest edge rushers in the world. and that we're not necessarily going to have the greatest inside linebackers in the world. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks.